Welcome one and all. It's time for another lockdown hobby time. Painting mutated, hideous, grotesque toenails. So there's going to be quite a lot of toenail work going on in this episode because on the grotesques you may notice, if you're particularly eagle-eyed, that last night, away from the camera, away from the spotlight, I applied some Nuln oil to all the silver areas, including the chains, of course. And I also picked out these areas in silver here and then Nuln oiled those up as well. So the weapon's a bit less of just a blob of gold, and I think it looks very nice. So, today we have bone colour, and we're going to be applying that on all the toenails and all of these claws as well. We are not going to be applying it to areas like these weapons here, because I think these are supposed to be rocks that are kind of attached to them in a haphazard manner. So I still have to decide what shade to do those. And good afternoon to Graham and Steve, who are in the chat already. Okay, so anything else that I'm going to try to get done today? Let's see. After the toenails, I suppose we might actually try putting some Agrax Earthshade onto the toenails as well, because that's going to be the next step, and darkening them up and then highlighting them. So not only the toenails, but also the little spikes that you can see sticking out in various places on these creatures. There's a lot of them on the backs, so we're going to be painting those in this colour as well to match the toenails. So very, very spiky creatures indeed, and we're going to select a paintbrush, not this one that I already had out. This one was for a slightly less precision job. We're going to get one that's got a bit more of a point to it, I think, because some of these spikes are quite small and fiddly. So what about this one? Let's go for this one. So this brush, this is actually from Games and Gears, this brush. It was supposed to be a particular kind of brush. It was supposed to be much thicker than that. And you can see it's kind of got a bend in it. But after a few weeks of use, I found that like the bristles were just everywhere, all over the place. So I ended up chopping most of them off, and then the bit that's left in the middle has actually got quite a nice point to it, and it's fairly rigid. So that little bend helps me paint round corners as well. So we're going to do that. Just going to check something first. Okay, I think we are ready to roll. So I'm going to wet the brush a bit, and I'm going to pour some of this bone colour out onto this alleged palette, which is actually just a small plastic bag. If you're lucky, sometimes you can actually peel the paint off these things and they're totally clean again. So let's give it a good shake and see what falls out. If anyone knows what that quote is from, then feel free to drop it in the chat as well. It's quite tough to open this one. It's quite old. It's been well used. So, dropping out some paint there. And we're going to make sure the brush is a little bit wet, because this paint, because it's old, has thickened up a little bit. So let's get a little bit of additional moisture in there. You can never have too much moisture. Well, actually you can. That's a problem all on its own. And on with the claws. I know I promised toenails, and I will get to the toenails for those toenail enthusiasts out there. But first, we've got some gosh darned claws to do. Don't want to make this too streaky, but we can always do another coat, and there's going to be washes applied on here as well, and more highlighting. I'm trying not to stray onto the skin, because at this point I don't have a perfect colour match for the tone of the skin right now. So when I've finished all of them, apart from neatening up and tidying, then I'm going to try and create a colour that matches the areas I want to fix, where something's strayed onto the skin. There's a few dots of silver on the skin on some of them. So that's going to have to be fixed, of course. This might take a couple of coats, this. Very slow process of me painting miniatures. This is the first time it's been fully documented. I'm not a very fast painter, but this does get me painting regularly, broadcasting it like this. All you've got to do is just do a bit every day and things get done. Even if you're not having a good day or it's a busy day, squeeze in that 5 minutes of painting or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And that's a little piece of progress that you don't have to do next time. Red hot motivation tips there. Even if it seems like it's not worth setting up for just a tiny amount of work. It can be worth it sometimes. So these are probably going to be the most annoying parts to paint, these, in terms of the bone colour. These big claws that stick out of his weapon. But there's not too many of those. One other model in the unit is going to have 2 arms like this, so he'll probably be the trickiest one in this painting session. Almost done with this guy's arm now, and then we can do his toenails, and that'll be riveting for all concerned. What's everyone else working on today? Okay, there's that part done for now. Toenails. I promised you toenails, and I am a man of my word. So the reason I put my finger in there suddenly was because a little bit of paint went onto an area it wasn't supposed to be, and I thought if I can just dive on that quick before it even dries a little bit, I can completely remove it, and that did actually succeed. Good thing about these models now, they actually look like they could be put on a table. There's enough colours on them, so some people could consider them painted now. So it feels like most of the work's been done, even if it hasn't. Steve, is it making Gore Riders and eating Easter eggs? And finished a vampire, Graham says. Does that mean you finished painting a vampire, or you, like, killed a vampire? Finished it off. It was already wounded, but then the sun came up, and you opened the curtains, and the vampire was no more. Okay, so he's also standing on a skull here, so I'm going to just paint that in bone colour as well, but we are going to try and make that look different to the toenails, so it doesn't just blend in too much. So I don't know how I'm going to achieve that exactly, but maybe I'll use a different wash on it. Just want it to look subtly different, because they're both bone, but we don't want the skull to look exactly like a toenail. So I played some more Vermintide with Mr. Remington Steele last night. I won't spoil the result of the game for anyone who's planning to watch that at some point, but it was very exciting. And we're on the verge of adding more humans to those games as well. So maybe we won't have to deal with the, shall we say, subpar intelligence of the computer at times. So you don't need your fancy paint handles, you just need a spray paint top with some holes drilled in it. Okay, so those are the toenails I've done on this guy for now. We can move on to his spikes now. Just going to check some social media things here. And let's jump back to the paint. So we've got a lot of spikes on this guy. The ones I'm not going to do, I'm not actually going to paint the ones on his back. The ones on his back, yes, but the ones on this area of his back that don't really have a beginning or end. They look just like the extended flesh rather than separate spikes growing out, so I'm not going to do anything to these three here. I'm going to do all these ones on his back. We've got the ones on his legs as well. And then I'm waiting for some paints to arrive. I'm looking for a kind of reddy colour to do on this exposed shin flesh area here as well. Steve tried watching last night but just can't watch computer gaming. I actually can't watch other people playing first-person shooter games. I can listen, but I can't watch because it gives me some kind of terrible motion sickness. That's the reason I can't watch some people's battle reports on YouTube either. People who zoom the camera around the place to show what's going on. I can't really watch those. Also the reason I don't try to play VR games. I have a feeling that would be bad for me. So they're looking more and more detailed as we go on, these models. We just pick out more and more. And hopefully we don't make any terrible colour choices and kind of offset the balance that's been established, because I do think they look good at the moment. Steve says, I just find there's too much going on and it's all too fast. Well, yeah, that can be the case. What were the popular games back in your day? I assume they'd invented the pushing the wheel along with a stick by then. They were a bit less visually demanding back in those days. In that time of year where the world can't decide what kind of weather it's going to have. One moment the sun's out and then suddenly it's howling winds and it's a bit chilly. Like tricks you into thinking that it's going to be summer soon. But then, haha, nope, fool you. Okay, he's got some, like, nipple spikes as well. 3 in each half of the chest. And he does actually have some exposed flesh around there where the spikes have poked through, so we're going to be doing a deeper red colour in there at some point also. Being very careful not to get any of this bone colour on the completed flesh, because that would require touching up later on, which would be mildly annoying. Deep red is here. apologising for being late, and rightly so. Everyone should be psychic and know 10 minutes before I actually announce these things. Okay, now for the spikes on the back. I think some of them are less spiky than others. Graham remembers seeing a Pong cabinet back in 74-75. Yeah, Pong certainly wasn't in fashion anymore when I was first exposed to computer gaming. The first games I remember would have been on one of those ye olde BBC computers. So games like Repton. So when would I have first played that? Presumably that would have been the late 80s and early 90s, in order for me to remember it. I'm sure I've shocked the audience now because everyone does seem to think that I'm about 25 due to my wonderful youthful visage. And my hip young go-getter attitude. Steve says, very funny, didn't have many computers around when I was growing up, probably only had two in our whole school. I had a ZX81 when it first came out, but I had to put games in from magazines to play. I remember the amazing day that I got my Master System console. That was like a leap into the future suddenly. We were definitely a Sega household. And I had an adapter for my Game Gear as well, so I could play all my Master System games on it, on a tiny screen. Did always have a thing for PC gaming though, even way back to Lemmings. Not so much Minesweeper, because really, did anyone even know how to play that? Very carefully painting these tiny little spikes on his head now. They're almost like hair. Okay, I feel like I've got all the spikes on this guy now. They're not finished, of course, there's going to be washing and highlighting going on, but you can actually see he's looking much more visually interesting now. More colours. So, who's next on the production line? Let's have this bad boy who's already had his toenails done. Steve's always rubbish at playing games on computers, so gave up playing them. Well, that's too bad. Most of the games I play these days, I started keeping a list probably about 10 years ago of the games that I was playing or the games that I finished, so I could keep track of how many games I was playing in a year. And that kind of inspired me to play more games that had a definitive ending. Because prior to that, I would play a lot of things where it was just kind of endless. So I would play like first-person shooter games or sports games where you could just keep playing over and over and over online on multiplayer, and there was no real ending. And I spent a lot of time playing Neverwinter Nights back in the day as well on Persistent World servers. So obviously no ending there either. But once I started keeping track of the games that I finished, it's kind of a motivation to finish more then, because you can add it to the list when you're finished. So I started playing a lot more single-player games, a lot more story-based games. And these days I like the kind of adventure, like the Telltale style games. But I also like the more kind of action-oriented ones. Let me have a look at my list to see what I've been playing the last couple of years to give you some examples. So, opening the document here, some examples of the games that I like playing. Okay, so last year I played games like XCOM, which I don't know why I didn't play that sooner, because that's really good. Turn-based strategy game, very good. Played some Total War Warhammer 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, not multiplayer because I just don't see the appeal of that in such a game. Let's see what else. Thronebreaker: The Witcher Tales is an interesting game, actually. It's set in the world of The Witcher, obviously, in which I've played all the other games as well. But Thronebreaker is like, it's a story, but there's battles that are card games, kind of. The whole game is built around card game mechanics, and you have an army with you, and you recruit different troops and so on. It's very interesting. And let's see, what kind of story-based short games have I played lately? Lorelei, which is the sequel to The Cat Lady and Downfall, which is a really fun series, which you can get on Steam. I think they're probably on other platforms as well. But they're really dark, like point-and-click adventure style, like two-dimensional. Very dark and creepy games. And a couple of years ago, I decided I was going to play through the entire Baldur's Gate series again, because I hadn't played Baldur's Gate 1 through to its end at any point, so I did that for the first time, and then I played Baldur's Gate 2 and the expansion again, back to back, so that was fun. I like Mass Effect series, Fallout series. Graham's reaction time has fallen too low for most modern games. Well, not every game requires lightning reflexes. XCOM is a good one if you don't have reflexes, because you can just plan out your moves, you're not in a rush to do anything. This guy doesn't have too much to do because I've already done his toenails, but while I'm here I might as well do the second coat on his toenails to get full coverage. The first-person shooter games I played nowadays are mostly multiplayer ones that I can either stream, like Warhammer-related ones, so Vermintide or Space Hulk Deathwing, or just some that maybe I used to play more, but now I just play randomly with friends, like Left 4 Dead 2. I used to play that a lot. But nowadays, not so much. I'm focusing more on games where I can actually finish them, as I said. Because I don't want to spend too much time playing games. Because if I look at my sheet that tracks how many games I finished in a year, when I got back into miniature painting, suddenly the amount of games dropped drastically. Obviously, painting armies takes up a huge amount of free time. Especially when you're like me and you can't settle with what you've got, you have to constantly have more armies. Which is pretty much most people in this hobby, I think. I know very few people that settle for what they've already got. Because collecting the army and painting it is a big part of it. For some people, using it on the table isn't even something that comes into their mind. Just doing the spikes on this guy's back here. Not much paint left in this little puddle here. I'm just keeping it a bit moist. Steve loves collecting armies. For me, painting might be the least enjoyable phase. But that's not to say I don't like it. Having a finished army, having finished units, might be the most fun part, and playing the games. Assembly of miniatures I just find easy and relaxing and not challenging, so that's quite fun as well. Okay, what other spikes have we got on this bad boy? Got a few around the front here on his legs. Kyle says that is decidedly not goblin. You're referring to this model that I'm painting? Because it's definitely not goblin. Goblins are old news, man. How do you find that sculpt? I think these sculpts are very nice. Some people were a bit dubious of them when they saw the pictures. I wasn't really one of those people, though. I think they just didn't feel they were very Abyssal Dwarf-like. Some people were saying they looked more like Night Stalker models, which, while I can appreciate, once you know the fluff behind the Grotesques, their appearance does make sense. Abyssal Dwarves are the hot new thing right now. Everyone's doing them. I feel like I was definitely on the bandwagon before it was cool, though. So I started my army quite a few months ago. Very delicate process, this, with tiny little hairs to paint. Okay, I think we've done all his spikes that are going to be bone coloured. Oh, actually, that's a lie. Because we've got these little bones that are sticking through his arm that don't necessarily look like his arms. Let's see. Kyle says, good taste, so can we expect to see Abyssal Dwarves in the coming months? You can expect to see more Abyssal Dwarves in the coming months, because we've got this guy, and all this unit, and we've also got the Hellfane, with green stuff in all his gaps and crevices, including his butt crack there. So he's going to be next on the painting table. And then, I wonder if people are getting sick of Abyssal Dwarf videos by now. Because I think it's something like 6 or 7 Abyssal Dwarf tournaments in a row. Lots of battle reports. So maybe people are going to get tired of them. Okay, I think we need an even tinier brush for some of these bits here. So let's find the teeny tiniest brush we have. Citadel Fine Detail Brush. So I'm going to paint these little bones that are sticking through his arm here. And then I might go to the other model that's the same as this one and do the same detail while I've got this brush out. It's really the only part that requires this brush for now, I think. But when the Abyssal Dwarves are done with, it's onto the Night Stalkers. You never rest in this hobby. There's always something else that needs to be done. I'm going to need some more bone paint out in a second, because this one's drying up a bit. You could break a lot of things with that Hellfane model, including a human skull indeed. If some villainous character breaks into my home, then I could definitely put that Hellfane in a sock and swing it round as quite a brutal weapon. Once it's painted, I wouldn't like to do that because that would be a waste of all my hard work. But it might be worth investing in a second one just to use as a home defense weapon. Okay, back to the tiny little details on this guy. I assume you can see what I'm doing with the tiny little bones sticking through his arm. I've seen this kind of detail before. It's on the GW Crypt Horrors. They have a similar thing going on with bones sticking through them. Okay, we're almost done with this guy now. Any little bits that I've missed? They have very detailed models, so it's easy to miss things the first time round. So you need to keep those eyes well peeled. At some point I'm going to do the teeth as well. I might actually do that now while I've got the fine detail brush out. We've got Brad in the chat as well. Hello there. Is there a better way to spend a morning than watching someone paint the toenails and teeth on Abyssal Dwarf Grotesques? If there is, I'd like to hear it, because then I'll do that instead. Okay, time to paint some teeth. Let's see how steady we can be here. If I'm a bit too thick with any of the lines, then I can just correct that later. It is a very tiny little detail, so I'm not expecting it to be perfect first time here. Might have to go over and fix it later. He's got several rows of teeth. You sure I'm getting some work done for sure? Yes, I am. This is day 10 of working on these things. They weren't assembled when I started, so it's not that fast, but it is getting done slowly over time. Right, so there's some teeth. Let's get him right close up there so you can see. How close is it going to be before it focuses? Got a pretty good idea there. There's more to be done on them, I think. And there needs to be a bit of red inside the mouth as well for the tongue. but I'm waiting for the right shade of red to arrive before I do that. So that'll be one of the last stages. Okay, I haven't decided what colour the eyes are going to be yet either. So we're going to pick out the other guy that's the same as him, since we've got the fine detail brush here. I'm going to do those little bones sticking through, and then we're probably just going to go through and do everyone's teeth as well while we're at it, so I don't have to keep getting this brush out. And then I'll go back and do everyone else's toenails with the not so fine brush. Sometimes I'll spot a little detail and think, I didn't see that on the previous guy. Did I miss that? And the answer is yes. Tiny little bit of bone that I didn't see on the other model, but I did see on that one. So going back and picking that out now. What dictated your colour scheme for these grotesques? Well, consistency across the army is quite important. But there's a wide variety of different kinds of creatures in the Abyssal Dwarf army. So, for example, all my golems look the same. Anything that's kind of that rock with lava running through its veins looks similar to the golems. The Abyssal Dwarves themselves have a particular look. The actual dwarves, and then the grotesques. When I saw they were all flesh, I thought, what colour have I used for like monster flesh up to this point? So I looked at my gargoyles and at my ancient winged half-breed that has the Overmaster riding it, and thought, the colour that I used for the flesh on those and the face on the flying beastie is kind of a reddy orangey, and that would keep the grotesques looking like other units in the army. But none of them have got such a huge amount of flesh as these guys. These are very fleshy. So this would be the main colour of them. So that was always my plan as soon as I saw the models. And I think it's working out quite nicely so far. Okay, well, we've got the fine detail brush, let's do his teeth. Okay, looking pretty good. I actually found it difficult to do the little hairs on the top of his head with the bigger brush as well, so I might do those now in the fine detail. Of course, using a fine detail brush doesn't mean that you won't make any mistakes. Your hand's just as likely to have a random twitch with this brush as it is with any other. It's just that the bristles are so much tighter together that there's less chance of the mishap. Don't think my hands would really have any kind of weird twitches going on. But when I'm doing fine detail, I always make sure to support both my wrists on the desk as well. Extra stability. I do have a fairly steady hand. Sometimes mistakes in miniatures where you get paint in the wrong place, it's just a result of a poor piece of decision making, like which direction to approach a detail with the brush, and it catches on something. Okay, I think we've done all his tiny head spikes. And his teeth, done all the fine details on him, so we'll go back and do the big details on him a little bit later. So actually there's 2 more little spikes that I'll do while I've got fine detail. On each leg, just these tiny little ones. It's not essential to use the fine detail brush on these bits, but it's going to be slightly easier while I've already got it out. We might go back and do the champion's teeth in a minute while I've got this brush out. I didn't feel the need to do too much converting to these miniatures, but the fact that I was making a horde, so I was going to have multiple of the same pose, the only thing I did was just reposition a couple of arms and then green stuffed in the gaps, which was very straightforward, as you would have seen if you saw my previous episodes where I was actually doing those conversions. So there's the fine detail done on him. Brad says, did you play Imperial Dwarves in Kings of War as well? I know that you had Dwarves for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, I remember correctly. Yeah, I've got Dwarves. I've used them a couple of times in Kings of War. Not in this edition, because I've got so many dedicated Kings of War armies. It seems like a waste to whip out my old Warhammer Fantasy army. Especially because I painted many of them in about the year 2000, when I wasn't that advanced in my painting techniques, so some of them don't look that great. Okay, what visible teeth have you got, Mr. Champion? He's got a few under here. It's very dark inside his mouth, so it's almost a case of just moving the brush around until it hits something that's a tooth. Okay, there's his teeth done. Is it going to focus on his face? There you go. Who else needs their teeth doing? Let's do the sky. So we'll do all the fine detail on him now. With tiny little details like this, it's almost as much as just finding the detail with the brush rather than actually pressing the brush into it. Just moving back and forth, getting tiny bits closer and closer as you go, until you actually touch the detail. Okay, that was a quick set of teeth for him. So let's do any random tiny spikes he's got on him. That would be mildly annoying with the bigger brush. So a couple more on his arm. And any teensy little spikes anywhere else? Just the ones on his head, pretty much. These ones aren't very spiky compared to the other models. Got a lot of little hair spikes though. I'm currently holding on to my Warhammer Fantasy Dwarf army, just in case. If Warhammer Fantasy comes back full force in the future, I would have a nice old school army to use. And you never know, I might use it in Kings of War someday. But a lot of the units that have traditionally been good in the Dwarf army in Kings of War are things that you wouldn't be able to find in the old fantasy range, like cavalry and elementals. One good thing to come out of this whole lockdown situation is that people seem to be cranking up their hobby, getting more stuff painted, more stuff built. And it's also causing a recirculation of some of the kind of hoarded models that people have over the years. Because obviously people want money right now. So if it's models that they're not going to get out and paint, which is obviously plan A, then people are selling things as well, which means they're going out there into the community for people to work on. So it's just shaking things up in the hobby. So you've got to look for positives in these things. Things happen and the world just has to make the best of it and learn from its mistakes. Whether the world does learn from its mistakes is another matter entirely, but in theory. I haven't specifically heard of anyone in the wargaming industry being struck down with this virus, at least fatally. But just because I haven't heard of them doesn't mean it's not happened. Yeah, this guy's teeth were quick, but his hair's taking a while. So I think that's all his fine detail done. We haven't just done the eyes yet because I don't know what colour they're going to be. And onto his reposed counterpart. It's just had the arm repositioned. Right, I guess the biggest gaming news lately is that Henry Cavill came out as a 40k enthusiast. It does appear that way, yes. There are some celebrities where you can kind of see this kind of thing coming if you know that they're just a big geek or a nerd or a sci-fi or a fantasy connoisseur. It happens though, people are just into these things and then they just happen to become a celebrity. You don't lose all your life passions because of that. I mean, look at me, for example, an A-list celebrity. Raking in literally ones of dollars a month on Patreon. So in this guy's mouth, I think I just found some extra teeth I might have missed on some of the other models. So I'm actually going to go back and look at their faces now, because I think they all have a similar tooth setup. Let me see. Maybe not these ones, but maybe his twin. Let's see. Yeah, I think I've missed a couple of teeth in this guy. We'll soon fix that. Okay. Have I missed any teeth on these guys? Maybe there's a second row in there as well. It's hard to see, but I'm going to go for it. Okay, found it. And this guy as well. The detail's just quite far in there, and it's very easy to miss. So much so that no one would even notice if he didn't do it. Okay, let's do this guy's hair and the bones sticking through his arms now. Just a quick check on the social media situation. Okay. The hair and the bones. I have actually got a brush that has an even finer point than this fine detail brush, but I save that for absolutely tiny little dots like eyeballs. Okay, before we continue with his spikes, just going to wash off the brush a bit. In this tub that used to contain hot chocolate powder. I'm one of those people that should change my water way more often than I actually do for painting. I'm looking forward to my wet palette arriving that I've ordered from the Mantic website, along with some paints, since they're actually still operating at the moment and they have things in stock, which is more than can be said for some of the other retailers at the moment. Obviously not everyone can operate safely in these times. And let's do his hair now. If you've ever been to Mantic HQ, then you'll know that it's quite a large place, the warehouse, and apparently they don't have many people working in there, so it's safe in terms of the spread of the virus. That's the third order I've placed with Mantic during the lockdown. And one order with Element Games as well. They're also still operating, but there are certain things they don't have in stock at the moment, and it's difficult to get things in stock if your stockist perhaps isn't currently operating. Who's not operating right now? I think Goblin Gaming are closed at the moment. I haven't tried to order anything direct from Games Workshop for a while, so I don't know what they're doing. Time to squeeze some more juice out of this bone. Steve says GW are shut as far as I've heard. I'm sure all their stores are closed. I don't know about their mail order department. Graham says GW are shut and they reckon it will take at least 2 weeks to start up again. Oh, well, there you go. Well, businesses are set up in different ways. Some are able to operate somewhat safely and others aren't. By the way, any PC gamers among you, then when I logged into Steam a few days ago, I found that I had 80% off vouchers for Vermintide 2 and Space Hulk Deathwing. So it might be a voucher that's tied to owning certain games, but if anyone has a Steam account, they should log in to check to see if those vouchers are in their inventory. I think they're only good for another week. Okay, I think we've done the fine detail on him as well. Just checking. Okay, so we don't know what colours we're going to do these guys' fingernails yet, because they look like just big pieces of sharpened rock that are like jammed into their flesh. So I need to do a bit more research on them. We are going to do his toenails shortly though, when we get off the fine detail brush again. So now we've got this guy. Warlord have reopened mail order on a limited scale. Apparently North Star is still open and Bad Squiddo are soldering on. Yeah, Bad Squiddo is very much just a one-woman operation for the most part. Those small one-person businesses where it's really relying on you to do all the work or you ain't getting paid. And it's not just a question of not getting paid. I think there's the issue of momentum with some of these businesses as well. If yours is the one business that isn't open at these times, then people who are looking to buy their lockdown hobby supplies will be going elsewhere, and then they could be loyal customers for somebody else. So it's very, very difficult for all these businesses, I think, right now. There's pressure on them to stay open. Financial and customer loyalty based. Doing this guy's teeth here. He doesn't have as many teeth as some of the others. In terms of spikes, he's got lots on his legs and on his back. So we'll use the fine detail brush for the small ones, like on his chest. And then we'll go back to the big brush in a minute for some of the larger areas. So for anyone wondering, the Grotesque Champion is the same model as the champion that you get in the regiment, but it's got different pieces with it. So it's the same pose, but you get a different leg, and a different head, and a different arm. So what I might do, because I got 2 regiments and the champion separately, and I'm going to use 5 of them in my horde, and obviously the champion has his own thing going on. So I'm left with 1 model, which is one of these from the other regiment. So I'll probably look through my bits box, possibly when I've got even more Night Stalkers, because they're going to come with some crazy bits that look very grotesque worthy. And I might end up cutting off one of the arms or 2 for the other model, maybe the head, swapping it with a different one. Because I don't think I've got any Abyssal Dwarf parts that would actually look like they fit in with this creature. I might have some weapons from other miniature ranges. I might have some parts from relics that would look quite good as a weapon on one of these guys. I'll have to look through my bits box. But then I can make a second Grotesque Champion that looks different to the first. And it's not like they're bad in the game. I think the Australian Clash of Kings winner had multiple Grotesque Champions in his list. When I was first starting my Abyssal Dwarf army and looking at the Grotesques in the list, I was thinking, which models would I use for those? Because obviously these weren't out yet. And I've seen the most common ones people have used, probably Dragon Ogres. And obviously they look cool, and they're some of my favourite models, especially the old Dragon Ogres. So they would have been up there as an option. But then I heard a little whisper that there were going to be new Abyssal Dwarf models. So I just held off, didn't get any alternative models for the army. Just stuck with official Mantic only, and waited to see what was coming next. And I'm glad I did, because I like these very much. And the Hellfiend, of course. Which we're going to be painting after these guys. After I've finished painting all the bone stuff today, I'll show you the base as well. I just don't want to be messing around too much while the paint's rapidly drying, since I still don't have a wet palette, since I only just ordered it the other day. Apparently Oathsworn and Irregular miniatures are both open as well. Okay, let's do this guy's hair with the fine detail brush, and then we're back to the fat details again. There's been minimal spillage into unwanted places while doing these fine details. Just the occasional tiny little bit that I'm going to have to fix at the end. But that's not a big deal. Okay, that's his fine details done with the bone. Let's go back to the fatter brush after we get this one soaped down. This is fine detail, so I'm not going to just grind it into the soap like I do with some of the others. I'm going to be a bit more careful with it. And just gently caress it back and forth into the soap. Not just grinding it down into there like I would do with the other brushes. That was loud. Steve's got Forge World Bull Centaurs as his, yeah, those are very nice models as well. I was disappointed with the Forge World Bull Centaurs for their Chaos Dwarves because I always thought they were way too big compared to the previous ones, because the old ones are about the same as Abyssal Dwarf half-breeds, and I thought they were very cool. Okay, Mr. Fine Detail Brush, time to go away for now. Back in the paintbrush holder. Let's have a look at my paintbrush holder actually. This will be exciting. So these are all the tools that I have at my disposal. So we've got the files and the mold line remover thing there. We've got sculpting tools here. We've got random bits of clear tube and pipe. And then we've got all these zillions of brushes. Many, many, many of them. This is really exciting. I think this is a toothbrush holder, but it's useful for my purposes as a brush holder as well. So, back to the bigger brush for the big fat toenails. So, over to this guy. I wonder if everyone is just going to show up with new armies to all the tournaments as soon as the lockdown's over. It lasts much longer, and everyone's painting feverishly during this time when they get the chance. We could just see all kinds of new stuff out there on the battlefield. Okay, what else have you got? Oh, he's got these nice big elbow spikes as well, which we're going to do. And I'm only painting these in because they look specifically like they have an end point. They don't just fuse straight into the flesh. There's like a little spot where they're poking out. So otherwise I would have just left them as flesh colour. Graham says heresy and hassle-free are open as well. It's good to know which companies are still trading at these times, so people know where to get their hobby stuff from. So the orders that I'm currently waiting for, a Mantic order for some game colour paints since they've started stocking them at a reasonable price as well, and they had all the ones I wanted in stock. And I've also ordered a wet palette with that as well from them. That's an army painter wet palette. And I expect to probably get some kind of update email on that today or tomorrow. I think it's bank holiday today, so I don't know if they're actually doing anything today. So probably tomorrow for that. And just waiting for my chickens from Bad Squiddo's last Kickstarter. I don't know if that's actually shipping yet. $30 chickens. And I think I might have got some pigs as well. So they're going to be used in my undead Rordia army. Undead halflings. And also they can be used when I run them as Empire of Dust and Undead as well, as swarms. Hopefully halflings have some kind of swarm when the rules come out for them. Now I'm going to paint the underside of these toenails because I'm not sure if this foot's going to be touching the ground or not when it's finished. Okay, Oh, and I've missed a spike. We'll soon get that. Okay. Brad says, anybody here got that Mucklegeet Giants from Heresy? No, I haven't at least. I've never even heard of it, but giants are always fun. Especially when you mess with them and add things to their kneecaps. This is going to be my Shadow Hulk for my Night Stalkers army. On my list of many games that I want to write, and by many I mean many, 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 and by write I mean I want to write down the basis for them, start the rules, and then abandon it and move on to something else. Then there is a game in there involving giants and worshippers of the giants. Whether that ever sees the light of day remains to be seen, but you never know. Time to do some more toenails. Okay, that was quick. Onto his elbows. I'm sure other people paint much faster than I do, and they would have this unit done in a matter of just a few days at most. I think I've been painting these probably about a week now. And at the current rate, I would estimate that we may have that long again. Even though it looks like there's not that much to do. Maybe less than a week. We can hope anyway. Main thing next is picking out what colour to do the big claws and spiky stabbing weapons that look like they're supposed to be stone just attached to the creatures and tied to them. And I need to paint all the straps around those in orange afterwards as well. So on his elbow spike I detected the paint was looking a bit too thick. So I basically just applied some water to it on the model, making sure not to let it escape the area that it's on. And then swept some of it away. Okay. Have we done all his spikes? Let's just do a little bit of a second coat on his toenails since it's quite dry now. Okay, who's next? This guy needs his toenails doing now. He's got some big fat toenails, this guy. Compared to the other one. What's the best giant miniature of all time, do we think? Is it the old Marauder giant? The metal one? Holding the big tree trunk? Or tree branch? A lot of people have nostalgia towards giants. I think it's not only the models. It's also a couple of other things. There's the giants in fantasy lore in general, and fairy tales and whatnot. They're always quite cool. And the rules given to them in the old versions of Warhammer, where they would be quite random and they would sometimes like pick up models and stuff them in their pants and things like that. Graham Rig, bad news, I'm running out of Agrax Earthshade and every supplier is waiting for a stock. Oh my god. That is essentially the apocalypse. How much Agrax Earthshade do I have left? Let's see, where is it? Well, I've got one that's totally empty here, but I'm pretty sure I've got another one somewhere. Let's see. Where's my other Agrax? I'm 99% sure I've got another one. What about this? There we go. So I've got this nice unopened one because this one's like on its last legs, maybe got a couple more drops left in its life. But then on to this one. Look at that, aren't you envious of this? Good news, I found a large bottle of Artist's Acrylic Medium Matte and have made an acceptable substitute. Is there really an acceptable substitute for Agrax Earthshade? Steve says the really old Citadel Forest Giant was pretty cool. And Brad says if they scaled up the Marauder Giant to Bone Grinder size, then that would be great. Yeah, the old Marauder Giant. A lot of old miniatures used to be quite small by comparison. If you look at old dragons, they tend to be smaller than the new ones. But that giant was actually quite a hefty beast. Not as tall as, for example, the Mantic Giant now, but it doesn't look small by today's standards. It was still very hefty indeed. I remember I got the old Marauder Giant around the same time I got the Orc Wyvern, which would have been Azhag the Slaughterer. I would like to still have that model, really, because that was nice as well. I just didn't really do a very good job painting it because I was a child and I was impatient. I would rather not spend my free time painting models when I could be playing games instead. Yeah, because I went into Games Workshop when they had a special deal on, which was buy 3 boxes and the cheapest one's free, and it had just been my birthday or something, so I had money to spend. And I got an Orc army. So I got the Giant, I got Azhag the Slaughterer, I got Snotling Pumpwagon, I got some regular goblins, I got Spider Riders. But I never really did them justice with the paintbrush because I was an impatient child and I moved on to a different army probably after about 2 weeks and became excited about that instead. Despite having all those models just sitting around there. And all the people that I played with would jump between fantasy and 40k as well, so that didn't help. They could never stick with one system. not much more to do on this guy's big spike areas. Okay, let's do a second coat on his toes now. We're going to be using a Grotesque Earthshade on these toes at some point. What I usually like to do is to apply a Grotesque Earthshade to a big toe or something like this that's painted in bone colour, and then wipe off most of it with my thumb, so it remains in the crevices and in the corners, so you get kind of a fade effect. We'll see whether I go for something a bit more advanced this time. So I want these models to look good. Okay. Oh, I've just spotted a tiny little bone sticking out of his arm. That I would normally like to do with the fine detail brush, but I don't want to get it out for just this one tiny little thing. I'm just going to be very careful instead. Okay, that's the bone done on him. So we've only got this bad boy left. And then some people will want a bit of a second coat as well. But that's going to be easier. That's not going to be required everywhere. Only one like on this video so far. That is outrageous. I expect at least 5 by now. Steve says his favourite giant is the old Grenadier Frost Giant set. The Giantess was a really great sculpt. Graham painted an RTG female giant from the Kickstarter just before the lockdown, and I have dug out my black scorpion giant I started years ago to finish. And Brad wished he could get his hands on a Battleforge giant out of production. It was 9.5 inches tall. That is quite a hefty beast. Shall we see how tall this mantic giant is with the tentacles on it? Let's see, have we got a tape measure around here? I've got a ruler, but it's not long enough, so I'll have to use it twice. Okay, so starting at the base. So this thing is 6 inches, this ruler is actually slightly less. So, slightly more, should I say. So 6 is there. So let's start it at the 0 there. And it comes up to my finger. So there. So we've got an extra nearly 3 inches on top of that. Yes, we're looking at about 9 inches there with this beastie to the top of his tentacle. Of course, with the base, it'll be even higher as well, depending on what kind of basing I use for my Night Stalkers. Still haven't decided exactly. Okay, let's do some claws and toenails. So even if I don't finish all the bone work today, I might do the second coat later off camera. So you've got something different to see tomorrow. Because it is going to be difficult to completely finish all of this bone work right now. It does take a while, as you can see. So far I've been doing roughly 2 hours a day on these streams. This one looks like it's going to go a bit longer though, because I'm not ready to stop this yet. Just a couple more bits of claw to do here. There are a few out of production models I wish I could get my hands on. They're difficult to find nowadays. Like some of the old Citadel dragons. I always thought they were really cool, but never really. Either when I did have them, such as the Wyvern, which isn't technically a dragon, but it's the same kind of look. I didn't put as much into it because I was young at the time, or later I had armies that just didn't have access to dragons, like my dwarves. The dwarves is when I started putting a little bit more effort into my painting and using some more techniques like washes. Okay, onto the other hand. I say hand, but it's not really very handy apart from for bashing people's brains in, which is all you really need to do if you're a grotesque. You don't have much of a life outside of mindless murder and bludgeoning. I feel like the fact that I've already decided to do Night Stalkers next has deprived me of the option of picking an army at random to do. Maybe I'll do that after Night Stalkers one of these days. There's something fun about just writing down the names of all the armies you don't do in the game and just picking one out and then having to come up with something for it. We'll see if I feel like doing that next time. Okay, Toenails. Got quite a lot to do on this guy. We've got Toenails and we've got the spikes on his back as well. Just going to pour out a little bit more paint here. 2 minutes 14, 2 minutes 15 now into this episode. I'm sure it's been riveting entertainment so far. Who wouldn't tune in, though, for this tasty, red-hot toenail action? You'd have to be nuts to miss this. So for anyone who's interested, there should be a real, genuine, old-school Andy and Rem show tomorrow. Just figuring out the technical issues now that Google Hangouts doesn't really work the same as it used to. That used to be a very easy way to do a multi-person stream. Now there's a bit more of a complicated process. Okay, first coat on the toenails. Let's do some back spikes. The end is definitely in sight now for the bone. The second coat won't be a thick all-over coat, it'll just be going over little spots that don't look particularly strong in the colour department, where the coverage wasn't great. So that's not going to take long, so I'm probably not going to do that live on the show. Brad, did Rem ever get Witch Coven off the ground? No. I don't think so, anyway. It depends what you mean by off the ground, because he did write a series of amusing little Witch Coven themed stories about Andy the Ungor, I think. But I don't know if that counts as off the ground. Speaking of getting things off the ground, I should try and finish one of my game projects at some point and try and get it created. There hasn't really been anything since Cheeks, and that's entirely down to me just not finishing anything since then. I'm sure everyone's still out there enjoying Cheeks, the international best-selling hamster-based cheek-filling combat game. And by that I mean it's the best-selling game in that genre, because it probably is. Four likes on this video now. We're getting more like it now. Steve says still need to pick that up. Are you talking about Cheeks? Because it is still available. I think there's a link in all my video descriptions. And anyone who's picking up Cheeks now, there is actually not exactly a version 2, because I don't think it's actually going to become a thing version 2, but I have written some amendments to the rules, which makes it a lot more clear and easier to play. So anyone who's picking it up now, feel free to send me a message and I'll send you some of the updated, easier to play rules. Almost done with the first layer of bone on this guy. And here's the last one as well. Everyone else has already been sufficiently boned up. Okay, we're going to put a second layer on these toenails now. This guy only has little toenails compared to his buddies. But he does have 3 legs though. So what would you rather have? Okay, while the paint's still quite wet, we're going to put kind of a second coat on these spikes on the weapon because it's not very good coverage on them at the moment because it's quite a large area. So, not being too precise here. As long as we're not hitting anywhere we're not supposed to. I do know at least a couple of people that still play Cheeks, and they usually message me and tell me when they're doing it. There were a couple of issues with it, though. A couple of issues with the rules. Obviously, it was the first set of rules that I'd written for anything. So the main issue was the playtesting was too controlled. There were certain things in the rules that weren't actually clear in the rules, but they were clear when I was playing it with someone because I could explain it. But when they were just left alone with the rules, it wasn't actually that clear. So that's something that I learned from that experience. You have to let people playtest the rules without kind of supervising them and see if they can actually figure it out on their own. Some things seem obvious because it's already in your head when you know the rules, and then you're just translating that onto paper. So it's clear to you, but not necessarily clear to everybody else. And apparently the German translation of the game lost some of the humour along the way. I've still got my copy sitting behind me on my shelves. Steve says, now that is funny. Yeah, it's like a joke in itself, isn't it? The stereotype of German humour. The stereotype being that it mostly doesn't exist. And then their translation of the game is the one that the jokes are kind of lost in there. Apparently, I don't speak German, so I don't know. Even though I did German at school for a few years. So I can count in German. And I can say a few key sentences, like Ich bin ein Schmetterling and Wo ist das Krankenwagen? I think those might be correct. So while we've still got this paint out, we're going to do a little bit of another bone coat on this guy's big claws as well. The same ones that we had on the other model. This guy's only got one hand's worth of them though, so it's going to be quicker for him. Just trying to get better coverage before we start applying any washes on them. Okay, that's looking good. Well, I've got the paint out there and it's still not quite dry. I'm going to put some more bone onto this big skull as well. And his toenails again. Most of the games I'm trying to write at the moment tend to be miniatures based games, because that's just my passion, vastly more than board games and card games, really. Writing a card game was a good in, kind of, to the industry and to get some experience. So miniature games are obviously much more expensive to produce. And I do have the advantage in that having this channel. I know there's a number of people on here who, if I were to create a miniatures game, would probably buy it just to support me, probably. So that's an edge that I would have over some people. Just need to actually get one of them finished. Okay, the paint's starting to dry up, so just quickly finishing off the second layer on these toenails, and then we'll be done with the bone. And you never need to see it again, because I'll just do quickly second coats on some of the bones off later on. Okay, that's how we're looking at the moment. This is definitely my favourite one, just because it is the champion and there's more going on, there's more gold. But you can see there's a lot more colour now, even though we added the bone, which isn't that much of a colour really. It's just bone, and that's it. But I think it does make it look like there's more going on the miniature now. So next time, if I haven't already applied some wash to the bone, we'll do that next time. And then we're also going to start on these bits that look like they're just rocks tied on or jammed into the flesh by the Abyssal Dwarves to act as weapons. So I have to decide what shade of grey I'm going to use for those, and how I'm going to wash and highlight them. I want them to look sufficiently dark and evil. I've got some very dark greys. but mostly airbrush paints, which are very thin. So I could just mix some black with some grey to make a sufficiently dark shade of grey and then highlight up from there. Okay, putting the brush down for now. I'm going to have a bit of a break from painting. Let's get something behind him so you can have a bit of a better look. Let's see, where's it going to focus? Where's the best spot for him? There you go. Nice up close and personal shot. Right up in his face. I'm going to apply some different colours to like the inside of his mouth, and you can see the exposed shin flesh here around the bone that's sticking out. That's going to be a red as well. The delicate art of getting the camera to focus on something. There you go. You get the idea. I think you got a clear enough look there. So let's sit him there, and it's going to be time to wrap this one up now. So Steve thinks it's looking really cool. I think so too. Hopefully the next few stages will really bring it all together, and we'll be able to finish them hopefully this week and get them varnished and then attached to this base, which has been ready for a few days now. They're going to be sat on there. If you go back to the earlier episodes of Lockdown Hobby Time, you'll see when I was building this base and arranging the models on it to see where they would fit in. So 5 of them are going to be stuck on there, and the champion is going to have... The champion's going to be on this base here. So that's for him. And then we're going to work on the Hellfane. When they're finished, I'm going to get this all primed up and start painting that, which is an interesting process as well, because there's going to be kind of lava inlaid into the rock, so you'll be able to see how I paint that. I'm sure it's not too revolutionary, but you'll get to see it anyway. And then when he's done, we're not going to move on to these Abyssal Dwarves just yet, the Black Soul Regiment. They're going to stay in the box for the moment, because I don't have any pressing need to get them ready just yet. So after that, I'm going to work on the Night Stalkers, including this guy, and his twin, who I'm going to build as well. And the Shadow Hulk. And let's see, where's the rest of those suckers? Yeah, we've got some more Night Stalkers built up as well, like these. Got some Butchers as well. So we've got a few units of those I can work on after all this is done. And then we'll see how it goes after that. We'll see how long the lockdown lasts, and the fact that it's motivating me to do more painting, I may actually continue doing these kind of videos after the lockdown's finished, just maybe not quite so regularly. We'll see. Okay, time to wrap this one up. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. I assume most of you have. Don't forget to check out my Facebook group, Twitter, and all that good stuff. There's also links down there for the various fundraising sources if you want to give me all your life savings on a monthly basis or on a one-off basis. And I think all that remains to be said is... Good night out there, whatever you are.